What's going on, everybody? Welcome into an all-new emergency episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. My gut reactions to the Packers' third-round picks, both Marshawn Lloyd and, of course, Tyron Hopper. Let's start right away with Marshawn Lloyd. Green Bay gets their change of pace running back. Somebody that is, 5'8", 220 pounds, is thick, is built well. When I watched him on tape, this looked like somebody who I actually felt could potentially be down the line a, number one running back. It's a little bit on maybe the iffy side. He hasn't had that experience in college, but I do think he has the build. I go back and I don't like necessarily talking about this running back quite a bit for some of the off-field reasons. When I first watched Ray Rice and watching him, and I kind of actually want to look up as I'm talking here of what his exact size was. But when I always watched Ray Rice, I always thought it's a little bit of a cheat code if you can have three things sort of all together all at once. And that is a little bit of a shorter stature, which we know Ray Rice had, but also a really thick build, which Ray Rice also had, but also incredible speed. And the reason that I say that is you have this really compact build and you have a low center of gravity. A lot of times, with that speed too, you're agile enough. Players bounce off you because you have that thick build. You're a compact build is what I kind of define it as. And I've always thought that that's a little bit of like a cheat code at the running back position because you're just a little bit of everything and it's really hard. So Ray Rice was 5'8", 199, ran a 4.47 40. And I don't like talking about Ray Rice all that much for, again, obvious reasons. But let's actually compare him. I'm doing this in real time. My apologies. I probably should have had this prepped ahead of time. But let's just compare him for a second to Marshawn Lloyd. And my apologies for the wait here. But Marshawn Lloyd, if you sort of compare, again, Ray Rice, 5'8". If you look at Marshawn Lloyd, 5'8", a little bit taller, so just barely like 5'8.5". Weight, Ray Rice is 199. Marshawn Lloyd is 220. Ray Rice ran a 4.47. Marshawn Lloyd ran a 4.46. And I'm not saying, again, they're exact apples to apples. Lloyd was actually more explosive in the vertical. Ray Rice did a little bit better on the broad jump. And then Rice actually did the agility testing, which he crushed, and Lloyd didn't do it, which I'm not sure he would have done quite as well on. But I've always said, like, you get that shorter stature, you get that compact build. And you look at Lloyd, 220. He's carrying an additional 21 pounds from Ray Rice. And he's still running the same, in fact, a faster 4.4 40. That's pretty incredible. And that's the type of thing that you see is, again, that compact build, that speed, the agility. I do think with Marshawn Lloyd, these are some of my notes coming right from my scouting report, again, prior to the draft. He's a little bit too east-west at times, but he's extremely shifty. He has great cutback ability. 8 fumbles. That's a lot of fumbles on a very small sample size of actual college carries. Now, there's a pro-con there. On the plus side, he has very minimal wear and tear for a running back that has this level of upside. That does not happen. We talk about all the time, or we did with Aaron Jones, of how Green Bay was able to extend his career because they never really gave him that full workload. These running backs in college a lot of times come with a lot of wear and tear already from the college game. And as you expand and games are you're having more games in the season and things like that, the wear and tear on some of these running backs can be incredible. With Marshawn Lloyd, he barely played at times. This past season, as Dane Brugler pointed out, he had more single carry games than double carry games. I mean, he had more carries of like 8, 9, 7 in a game than 10, 11, 12 or more. He was just a rotational back in college, and that's what he's going to ultimately come and be in Green Bay. But you get this really impressive change of pace. He averaged over 7 yards per carry in college football a season ago. He really got to show off, I think, his explosive ability. The fumbles is an issue, right? 8 fumbles, that's a lot on a minimal sort of workload. That's something, as Brian Gutekunst said in his press conference after, that is going to have to get corrected. They believe they can correct it. But that's one of those things that's just a deal breaker, right? If he can't fix his fumbling issues, he can't get on the field. So that's going to be one big thing that he really has to clean up. Pass pro is another. It's great that you want Lloyd to be maybe a little bit more of your change of pace guy, but if you want him to be on the field on some of those passing downs and, again, be a little bit more of that playmaker, one, he's going to have to show a little bit more as a pass catcher, something he didn't get asked to do a ton. And two, he's going to have to learn how to pass pro better. So there's a lot to like about Marshawn Lloyd and how he runs the ball, the fact that he has limited wear and tear. Did have a torn ACL previously. So this is the second Packer in this draft that has had a torn ACL. Again, this is happening more and more with athletes as they go through all the rigorous things that you need to do to become an NFL player. These things just happen, unfortunately, but it's another thing that he's had to overcome in his career. But this is going to be somebody that's going to come in my opinion, be running back 2 for Green Bay right away. That's not a disrespect to A.J. Dillon. I just think you have somebody that's far more dynamic. Now, there's a really great chance that A.J. Dillon still has a very good role on this team, assuming he makes the team. We'll see what Green Bay does at running back on day 3. We'll see what Emmanuel Wilson brings to the table this upcoming season. Dillon's not guaranteed a spot, depending, again, what they do on the roster, but there's a really good chance that A.J. Dillon makes the roster. And if so, that third down role, Josh Jacobs can do a little bit of that, but A.J. Dillon's pass pro ability is so important in that type of role. And again, I think Josh Jacobs will be there too, but that's not what Marshawn Lloyd's going to bring to the table. But this brings you a different flavor of running back than what you had on the roster. And again, a guy that averaged 7 yards per carry. Lloyd's not, he's small from a height standpoint, but he's not small from a 220-pound standpoint. This is not your complete scat back shifty. We're not talking about Bucky Irvin here. We're not talking about Blake Corum here. We're talking about somebody that has the build to maintain and withstand the rigors of an NFL season and a heavier workload if you need him to. But he does have some of that dynamic game-breaking ability that he is going to bring to the table that, quite frankly, when Aaron Jones was out, they did not have on offense. They desperately needed to address this offseason, to have somebody that, because for all the things that A.J. Dillon does do well, game-breaking speed and playmaking and runs of 20-plus yards and just in general playmaking is not something that he did well, especially this past season. And you have to have that ability. And we saw, quite frankly, how different the offense was with Aaron Jones and without Aaron Jones. And the hope is that Josh Jacobs is going to be able to survive the rigors of the season a little bit better, and that you're going to be able to utilize him all throughout the year, and you don't have as many injury concerns as maybe you would have with Aaron Jones. That will remain to be seen. But now if you do get into a situation where Jacobs, does go out for a little while or misses a few games, you have someone in Marshawn Lloyd that still has that ability to be a little bit of a home run threat, to have that change of pace, and to be a playmaker within the offense. And that was something, like I said, I thought they had to address. They did it. Now, whether or not you're thinking, it's great, I really liked him, but what about a Jalen Wright? I get that. I really like Jalen Wright, and Jalen Wright's got that 4.3 40 speed. But I just put it this way. Jalen Wright came from an offense that I don't think we got a really great feel for, what he's going to be able to do in the NFL. I think Lloyd is going to be a little bit more of like what he did in college he's going to be able to do in the NFL. It's a little bit more copy and paste. I also think that 220 pounds is going to be something that is really going to be, super advantageous for Marshawn Lloyd as he sort of, makes his way to the NFL. Just looking back at Jalen Wright really quick here, trying to remember exactly what his weight was. Again, sorry for the weight here. No pun intended. He obviously had a ridiculous relative athletic score. He's 210, so he's not on the short side. The light side. But 4.38 40. I would have had no problem if they took Jalen Wright at that spot. And if you want to make the argument that, hey, Jalen Wright would have been better, well, we'll see. We'll ultimately be able to find out which one is. But I have no issue whatsoever with Green Bay going Marshawn Lloyd. Daniel Jeremiah had him as their, his number one running back in the entire draft. And I do think you get a more well-rounded player in Lloyd. Some of the pass catching will remain to be seen. The fumble issue is going to have to get cleaned up. Didn't do a ton on special teams, but this is a type of running back that fits Green Bay well. And last thing I'll say here about Lloyd before we go to Hopper, Brian Gutekunst has said they want running backs that are going to be durable and physical in December and January and February, right? This is a player that, despite his shorter stature, because of that compact build and compact frame, is going to be that. So he can be the change of pace guy, but he can also be the physical guy because of how he is built. I think you get the best of all worlds. Goody felt pretty comfortable that he's going to be able to catch the ball well out of the backfield. Goody felt comfortable that they're going to be able to get that fumbling issue cleaned up. Pass protection is going to be a work in progress, as it is for most rookie running backs. But those are the things that he's going to have to master in order to make sure he actually gets on the field. Because if he can't pass pro, if he struggles to catch the football, and, obviously if he fumbles, those are going to be things that just keep him off the field. And those are things that can derail a running back's career. So there will be a little bit of a hurdle there. But if he can get over those and fix those things, you get an extremely well-rounded running back that, like I said, has that little bit of that cheat code mentality where they're smaller. It's tough to find them, under a bunch of 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" offensive linemen. If you're a linebacker and you're trying to see through, you've got a 5'7", 5'8" guy, in this case, 5'8" guy. That's tougher to identify. But he's also shifty, 4.40 speed, and you bounce off of him because he has that dynamic compact build. Really, really like this pick for Green Bay, and I think he should pay dividends right away this season, which is really a theme for Green Bay on day 2. And then let's go to Hopper, the linebacker, obviously. This is another really interesting pick for Green Bay. Tyron Hopper, linebacker out of Missouri, 6'1", 231 pounds, had a 7.42 relative athletic score, although with Hopper, the RAS scores have him at a 4.68 40. Goody mentioned they had him in the 4.5s, the high 4.5s. So that would change that a little bit, probably put it a little bit higher. Agility scores were not good. 4.46 in the short shuttle, 7.29 in the 3-cone. Those are pretty low. 231 pounds is pretty low for a linebacker, but not necessarily for Green Bay's type of linebacker. He was 159 on the consensus draft board. He only had a 51.5 grade from PFF, which 60 is average on 562 snaps this past year. 468 career special team snaps. More on that in just a moment. To me, he is best as a blitzer and as a quarterback spy. When you get him having to be a bit more instinctual, when you get him having to drop back in coverage a little bit more, you see some of the gaps in his game. But as a blitzing, attacking linebacker, he is not afraid to take on blocks. He will be a little bit more that physical guy. For those that have been saying like, hey, it'd be nice to have somebody that's willing to take on some blocks and be a bit more physical, Tyron Hopper has some of that to his game, and he's willing to do that. Poor instincts in both pass and run defense. I think those instincts are going to have to get cleaned up a little bit, and which is a tough thing to do. Those are usually natural, but maybe the game slows down for him at some point. His college coaches did make mention that the game was starting to slow down and that he was a player that was really taking on a different side of things per Dane Brugler this past season, and that he really like sort of dedicated himself to his craft a little bit more. Poor change of direction, and the agility drills sort of spell that out as well. He's extremely impressive in pursuit with speed to track down from behind. Another team captain. And again, we had Joey on from Underage Packers. I know he's now with Packers Central with Bill Huber. He came on. He's also with Missouri Central and covers the Missouri Tigers. He had glowing things to say about the person and the personality. This is going to be another locker room guy that fits in incredibly well. And again, what that means is a lot of those guys work extremely hard. They're leaders, and they take this very seriously. And it just gives you usually more opportunity to reach your ceiling as a player, which with all the traits that he does possess is still very, very high for Tyron Hopper. Tackling has been a bit of an issue. You'd like to see him wrap up a little bit more. He does not look natural in man coverage. I thought he was more of like a 5th, 6th, 7th round guy, more than like an end of the 3rd round guy. Did feel like a little bit of a reach here, but two things I want to talk about here with Hopper. Number one, special teams. 468 career special team snaps. This is a player that theoretically should come in and be able to help Rich Bisaccia's special teams from day one. Rich Bisaccia, outside of getting Keyshawn Nixon back and getting Greg Joseph as a competition piece at kicker, has not been throwing very many bones this offseason. Rudy Ford is gone. Dallin Levitt they cut midway through last season. They did get Eric Wilson back, but it's not like they've added anything to the roster from a special team standpoint. To me, getting a Hopper in the 3rd round here is somebody who is immediately going to be a big-time core special team player. And that may not mean anything to you when it comes to a 3rd round pick, but as we change these kickoff rules and kick returns are going to happen all the time, having somebody like a Tyron Hopper on your team who is, straight line speed from point A to point B and is fearless, willing to take on blocks, he is going to have a lot of value as a coverage guy on those kick return or kickoff units. That's super valuable. The other thing is, notice who they took at linebacker on day 2. Edgerrin Cooper and Tyron Hopper. Fast, attacking linebackers. You want to know or have a tell on how Jeff Hafley wants to use his linebackers? You get a little bit of that from Tyron Hopper and from Edgerrin Cooper. These are fast, downhill, attacking linebackers all day, every day. Do they fit as well in Joe Barry's defense where everything is backing up and then attacking? Cooper probably still, he's just a good enough player, but Hopper maybe not. But if they plan on using these as a lot of double A gap blitzes, taking on guys as run blitzers, and being more physical and attacking with these linebackers, Edgerrin Cooper and Tyron Hopper are extremely physical, attacking, downhill, explosive linebackers. That to me tells you that that's what they're looking for at that position. And that should be exciting. So again, is he maybe a little bit of a reach here? Maybe. Is he somebody that is maybe going to have to earn his spot a little bit more, not from a roster spot standpoint, but actually getting on the field? I don't know that there's this easy day one linebacker spot open. I said before the draft, this was my scouting report on him. I said if they didn't draft anyone else, I thought he would actually compete for that number 2 spot with Isaiah McDuffie and at worst be their number 3 linebacker. Now he's probably competing for that number 3 spot with McDuffie and at worst being their number 4. This is a much needed depth piece who's going to be a core special teamer from day one. And I think is an immediate player on your 4-3 defense. I mean, I think this could be legitimately Quay, Cooper, and Hopper. I think that could be your 4-3. We'll see what happens with McDuffie, but those 2 guys will compete. And if nothing else, you get, like I said, a much needed depth piece that probably has a rotational role, that's a core special teamer, and that I think is going to fit very well within Jeff Hafley's defense. So really, really love the Marshawn Lloyd pick. The Hopper one I think is going to be more interesting to keep an eye on. I will say of almost anyone in this draft, I'm almost most excited to go back and watch a little bit more of Tyron Hopper's tape just to kind of get a better feel for who he is as a linebacker. I do really like his attacking mentality, but we'll have a full breakdown of him, obviously, as time goes on. We're going to break down every single one of these picks. I'll do a day 2 recap tomorrow morning. That'll be out. That'll go into these players in a little bit more detail. So excited to go through that with you. But this is my gut reaction. Like the Tyron Hopper pick as a core special teamer, depth piece as linebacker. I do think a Cedric Gray out there would have been a much better pick. Peyton Wilson's injury issues cloud everything there, but Cedric Gray's a really, really good linebacker. Probably would have preferred that. At running back, Marshon Lloyd, again, do you want to compare the Jalen Wrights and say, hey, I would have maybe preferred him? Okay, I certainly get it, but I really like the Marshawn Lloyd pick and have no qualms with that whatsoever. 2 fun players that I think Goody added on day 2. Add that to Edgerrin Cooper at linebacker and then Javon Bullard at safety. Green Bay improved their roster in a pretty significant way, specifically on the defensive side of the ball with a safety and 2 new linebackers. You get the running back. They hit all their needs. I'll end with that. This is a team that needed offensive line. They got it day 1. They needed a starting safety. They got it day 2. They needed a starting linebacker. They needed depth at linebacker. They got it day 2. They needed a running back that could be the change of pace guy and be somebody with a little bit more dynamic playmaking ability. They got it on day 2. They hit every single one of their core needs. Do they need more offensive linemen? Yes. Could they use another safety? Yes. There's some other things you'd like to, sort of fill in? Of course. But Goody still has a lot of ammunition on day 3, and it should make for a very fun day 3 as well. That's going to do it for me tonight. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning with a breakdown of everything that happened on day 2. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.